Big Brother 22 or Big Brother All-Stars premiered on August 5th, 2020 as 16 former house guests came back into the Big Brother house vying for $500,000. Among them were house guests from the original All-Star season, former winners, runner-ups, and David. House guests entered the All-Star house 4 at a time, where they each immediately competed in a competition to qualify for the HOH comp. After all the house guests competed in the qualifier, they finally meet all together in the living room before heading out to the backyard, where 6 of the qualifying house guests compete in the first head of household competition, where Big Brother 16's Cody comes out victorious. Cody and Nicole, who also played on BB16 and won BB18, solidify their final 2. Cody considers BB10's Keesha as someone he can nominate, but also wouldn't mind throwing up Janelle and Kaysar, who worked together on both BB6 and the original All-Star season. Cody then reveals this summer's new twist, the Safety Suite, where for 3 weeks everyone will have the chance to compete in a competition where they can earn themselves and one other person's safety for the week, but they can only compete one time. Kaysar and Janelle both talk to Cody and get super sketched out, so they both decide to play in the competition. They're the only ones to play though, so Kaysar comes out victorious and then chooses to also grant safety to Janelle. Cody backtracks and puts up Keesha and Big Brother 11's Kevin as his nomination picks. We then get a bunch of deals being made. Big Brother 20 runner-up Tyler has a montage of him making final 2 deals with pretty much everybody, and Cody forms a final 2 apart from Nicole with Big Brother 12's Enzo called The Root. Nicole and Ian also form a duo since they're the only 2 former winners on the season. Devon and Bayleigh also form their final 2. Kevin looks for literally anyone who would work with him and chooses Enzo to play in the veto competition. Enzo wins the veto but elects not to use it, leaving Kevin and Keesha on the block. Memphis tells Cody he wants to form a 6-person alliance, so he goes to Tyler, Dani, Nicole, and Christmas, and together they form an alliance called The Committee. Meanwhile, Cody goes to form another side alliance with Bayleigh, Devon, and Enzo. Keesha goes home on a vote of 13-0, and then committee founder Memphis wins the next HOH competition. Memphis basically tries to get everyone to play in the Safety Suite competition so only he and Cody can compete next week, but nobody really buys it. He's also grown concerned about Ian and his threat level. The next Safety Suite competition happens, and Christmas wins and saves Ian along with her. Memphis then nominates Big Brother 21's Nicole, Anthony, and David for eviction. Tyler's pissed at the way Memphis is treating David. Janelle and Kaysar try to get Nicole F as a backdoor option in Memphis's mind, and says that her, Cody, Tyler, and Dani are definitely working together. Memphis doesn't like that she just name-dropped 4 of his alliance members, then takes this info to Cody. Cody takes that info to the remaining alliance members, and they decide they want Janelle or Kaysar out this week. Memphis wins the power of veto and is quickly met by his alliance members to backdoor Kaysar or Janelle, while also having Janelle wanting him to backdoor Nicole F. Memphis knows he can play both sides, so he decides it's best to not use the veto. Kaysar wants to build a group to combat Cody, Tyler, Nicole F, and Dani, and pitches this to Devon, and Devon doesn't really buy into it. He also mentions that he thinks David is with that group of 4. Devon asks David if he's in an alliance, and he doesn't really deny it. Nicole Anthony goes home on a vote of 10-2, then committee member Tyler wins head of household. The Slick 6 is formed with Cody, Dani, Tyler, Enzo, Devon, and Bayleigh, more so to make sure Bayleigh and Devon don't try to form anything with Kaysar or Janelle. Nicole picks Janelle to be a have-not, which causes some short tension. Dani mentions to Cody that she found Bayleigh, Devon, Janelle, and Kaysar talking in a room together before the vote last week, so they assume that they're just working together. Enzo then wins the Safety Suite competition and chooses Christmas to also be safe, and Tyler nominates Kaysar and Janelle for eviction. We get a montage of Dani planting seeds and working with pretty much anyone, and Cody wins the power veto, then elects not to use it, leaving Janelle and Kaysar on the block. David is sketched out after hearing that Devon tried to flip the vote to get him out the week prior. He tells Devon that Cody and Tyler gave him this info, then tells Tyler that he ratted him out. Janelle then goes out on a vote of 9-2 with Enzo and Dani casting rogue votes for Kaysar. The next HOH competition takes place and Enzo barely beats Kaysar to become the new HOH. Cody thinks Dani is one of the people that voted out Kaysar in eviction because she was talking about doing it before the eviction, but Dani denies doing it. Enzo makes the easy choice and nominates Kaysar and Kevin for eviction. Ian feels that he might be a replacement nominee if Kaysar or Kevin come off the block, so he goes to make sure he's good with Enzo, which only sketches Enzo out even more. Kaysar tries to warn Bayleigh that the people she thinks she's good with, the Slick 6, aren't really working with her. Bayleigh gets annoyed that Kaysar thinks he knows exactly what's going on in the game and doesn't listen to him. The veto competition comes down to Kevin and David, and Kevin comes out victorious. Christmas wants Enzo to nominate her so that it ensures Kaysar goes home, and so she can solidify more trust in people. Dani tells Tyler and Nicole that the Slick 6 wants a meeting, forgetting Nicole isn't in the Slick 6. This upsets Tyler and Enzo, and at the veto meeting, Kevin uses the veto on himself and Enzo puts up Christmas in his place. Enzo keeps complaining about how messy Dani is, and Cody decides it's time to tell Enzo about the committee alliance. Tyler complains more about Dani to Bayleigh and Dayvon and says that she always plants seeds to get the both of them out. Ian tells Kevin that he thinks there's a big alliance with Nicole and Cody at the core of it, and everyone else is falsely believing they're also in the core. He then gives the same pitch to Bayleigh. At the eviction, Kaysar goes on a 10-0 vote. The HOH competition comes down to Dayvon and Christmas, with committee member Christmas winning. After being targeted by fellow Slick 6 members during the competition, Dayvon realizes that the alliance is pretty much over. Christmas decides that she wants to target Dayvon and Bayleigh since they'll always have each other's backs before hers. A new twist comes into play called the BB Basement, where 3 house guests will win various powers. The house guests head to the basement where David, Dani, and Christmas claim these powers. Christmas wins the blocker, which prevents herself or someone else from being nominated at the veto meeting. Dani wins the replay power, allowing an HOH to compete in back-to-back weeks, and David wins the disruptor, allowing him to save someone at the nomination ceremony. Bayleigh asked Dani if she was trying to plant seeds to get her and Day out, and Dani denies it. Tyler now regrets giving that info to Bayleigh and Dayvon. At nominations, Christmas puts up Bayleigh and Dayvon. Christmas is upset of having to nominate them, I guess. Dayvon tells Dani and Nicole that it was Tyler who gave them the info she was targeting them. Dani tells Christmas about all of this. Christmas then wins the power of veto. Tyler feels upset that he sabotaged Dayvon and Bayleigh's game and tells them he's going to ask Christmas to put him on the block. He goes to Christmas, but she absolutely does not want to do it. Dayvon tells Christmas that Bayleigh absolutely wants Tyler's head on a silver platter, which makes Christmas even more sure to not put Tyler up. Christmas then doesn't use the power of veto. Also, I should mention that this week was super weird and the feeds were cut for a lot of the Tyler stuff. I just decided to recap it the way the show edited it, even though a lot of what they showed was out of order. So if you want to do more of your research on what all happened during that week, I would encourage you to do so. Anyway, Dayvon tells Christmas that Bayleigh is upset because she told her that Dayvon was her number one, and Christmas used that against her. Christmas basically says that's the game. Dayvon thinks it was personal information that she used against her. Voices are getting raised, Bayleigh comes in, Ian's in the shower, Bayleigh and Christmas get into it, and at the eviction, Bayleigh ends up going on a vote of 9-0. In a battle of endurance, committee member Dani wins HOH. Dani toys with the idea of putting up Tyler. Cody would rather her nominate Kevin and David, so that's exactly what she does. However, David uses his power to pull himself off the block, and Dani decides to have Tyler as the new nominee. At the veto competition, Dayvon pulls out her first ever Big Brother competition win, and Dani begs Dayvon not to use the veto. But Dayvon knows she needs Kevin to stay in this house, so she uses the power of veto on him, and Ian goes up in his place. Kevin and Dayvon think that Tyler will be going, but the committee, minus Nicole and Dani, want Ian gone. Nicole tries to convince the committee to vote out Tyler, but then becomes the deciding vote to send Ian out 5-3. Then, committee member Memphis wins HOH. Dayvon and Kevin think that David flipped his vote and voted out Ian when it was actually Nicole that did it. David gets defensive and feels like he was set up. Memphis wants David as his target, so he makes a fake deal with him that he would stay safe if he didn't compete in the veto. At nominations, Memphis puts up Dayvon and Kevin. For the veto draw, Dayvon gets house guest choice and picks Nicole to compete. With David not competing, Memphis wants everyone to throw the veto so he can backdoor David. Nobody likes the plan, and Tyler wins the veto. Tyler tries to tell Memphis maybe they should target Dayvon since her, Nicole, and Dani seem to be tight. Tyler then doesn't use the veto. Memphis tells Enzo he wants to make 2 separate final 3 alliances that include him and Enzo as 2 of the 3 members. So he makes one that includes Cody and one that includes Christmas and calls both of those alliances the Wise Guys. Christmas knows that Dayvon, Nicole, and Dani are together, so she wants to reel David in to help get all 3 of them out, citing that she knows he was truthful about voting out Tyler. At eviction, Dayvon goes on a 5-2 vote. Then committee member Cody wins the HOH. Dani wants Cody to put up Christmas, and Enzo tells Cody about Memphis' final 3 Wise Guys alliances plan that includes Christmas. Not wanting to take a direct shot at Christmas right now, Cody nominates Kevin and David. Nicole informs Christmas that Dani is throwing out her name, and Cody wins power veto, leaving Kevin and David on the block. But now it's triple eviction time. 3 house guests are leaving all in one night. The first victim of the night is Kevin, who goes home on a 6-0 vote. Then at the HOH, Memphis comes out on top and immediately nominates David and Nicole. Christmas then wins the veto and doesn't use it. Tyler and Christmas decide they want to take a shot at Nicole, but Enzo doesn't break the tie in their favor, sending David out on a 3-2 vote. Tyler then wins HOH and nominates Nicole and Dani. Tyler also wins veto and elects not to use it. The House then votes out Dani unanimously. Cody then wins the next HOH. Nicole wants Tyler and Christmas dead after they tried to vote her out and wants Memphis dead since he nominated her. Cody assures Tyler he's not the target and nominates him next to Christmas. Tyler decides he wants to tell Enzo about the committee so he might try and save him, but Enzo already knew about it from Cody. But it doesn't matter because Cody wins the power of veto. Enzo tells Cody about Tyler telling him about the committee, which pretty much makes Cody switch his target to Tyler. Cody doesn't use the power of veto. Cody knows Memphis is lying to his face about wanting Christmas out since he knows he has a final 3 with her, so him and Enzo decide that Memphis may need to go next. At the eviction, Tyler goes 3-0, and then Nicole wins her first HOH. Christmas tries to convince Nicole that Cody and Enzo are the biggest targets in the game, but Nicole just tells Cody about it. Memphis tries to pretend that he doesn't have any alliances outside of the committee, but Nicole knows that's BS and nominates him alongside Christmas. Nicole then wins the veto and doesn't use it. With Cody and Enzo as the sole votes, they send out Memphis 2-0. At the final 4 HOH, Enzo wins and solidifies his spot in the final 3. Nicole is upset that Enzo was selfish in the HOH comp. Enzo tells Cody he doesn't want Nicole in the final 3, and Enzo learns that he may need to sit next to Christmas in the final 2. He nominates Christmas and Nicole for eviction, and Cody wins the final power of veto, elects not to use it, and evicts Christmas. Nicole wins the first part of the final HOH competition, and Cody destroys Enzo in part 2, and Enzo thinks his game is done. Nicole and Enzo, meanwhile, both think Cody would win in a final 2. But it doesn't matter because Cody wins part 3 of the final HOH and then tearfully evicts Nicole. The jury returns to question Enzo and Cody and then vote for the winner of Big Brother 22. And it's not really a surprise as Cody wins in a unanimous jury vote 9-0, and Davon wins America's favorite house guest. There we go. Thank you so much for watching this recap of Big Brother 22 All-Stars. There were plenty of things that happened this season that didn't make the cut to this video that definitely impacted the game, like the wall yellers. And as always, there was plenty of controversy throughout the season that would have made this recap about 5 hours longer, but again, I encourage everyone to look up more if they're interested or watch our podcast on the channel. Also, be sure to subscribe if you haven't yet and hit that like button and comment all the moments that I definitely left out of this video and even comment what season you want me to recap next. Thank you all again, and we'll see you soon.